Kidnap by me. Okay. All right, we're going to continue where we left off on the other video. I didn't see Galen again until the day we were to attack Larg's army. I stand in my room looking out at the activity outside my window. All the women and children were quickly hurrying to the center city. During our training, Galen had explained to me that the middle of the city could disconnect from the platforms around it, then submerging underwater to connect with the city below, giving protection to their families. I had also learned that the smaller platforms, which served as housing and parks, were also warships. At the time, I had found it fascinating that they could accomplish such things. Watching the harmless platforms disconnect and transform into ships of destruction made me feel cold and afraid. I prayed that we would be successful. I turned from the scene outside, moving towards the weapons that I had laid out on the bed. I pick up the weapon that Captain Arton had said the scientists had been constructing. It had the appearance of a gun, but instead of deadly bullets, it shot out a type of force field. The field, after attaching to the target, envelops it and drags the person down below the ocean surface. There would be enough air for the person to survive while the soldiers under the water swam them back to the Arthenian city below. Once there, Ethan will show them the treaty, and hopefully they will switch sides. Placing the gun onto the holster on my hip, I hope that this plan will work. I looked down at the daggers that I had chosen, quickly adding them to my outfit. I tried hard not to picture using them, although I knew I would when the time came, but only as a last resort. I was confident that I could disable my opponent without killing them. I hurried out of my room only to run into Galen in the empty hallway. He stands there looking me over. He growls, "Where do you think you're going?" I look at him, puzzled by his reaction. I felt annoyed, realizing by the look on his face that he wasn't going to allow me to come along. I turn around in a circle, then facing him, I put my hand on my hip, saying, "I'm going to a costume party. Do you like my look?" I glare up at him, continuing before he could reply, "You know exactly where I am going. And don't you dare try to pull that macho crap on me. Besides, this is what you have been training me for anyway." I push past him, marching down the hallway. He follows close behind, saying, "I trained you so that you would be safe if I wasn't there to protect you." Grabbing me by my upper arm, he adds, "Now I am going to take you to the center of the city." I laugh, pulling my arm out of his hold and shaking my head. I exclaim, "Oh, no, you don't. I am coming with you, and that's it." I turn to face him, taking a calming breath. I say, "Just hear me out, okay? I know you want to protect me, but I will be the Garlanian leader if we win this battle. How can I face them if I am not willing to fight for them myself? They are my people, Galen. What would you do if our roles were reversed?" Galen sighs, shaking his head, then takes my face in his hand, slowly kissing me gently. He says, "Stay close to me. Keep your guard up." I smile up at him, saying, "I will." Later on board one of the warships, we stood watching the city sink below the surface. Galen squeezed my shoulder, saying, "We have work to do." I follow him back to the bridge of the ship. I watch as he pulls out a map, giving out orders to his men. Galen says, "Relay the message to the fleet that we are moving out. All hands prepare for battle." The time seemed to tick slowly by as we traveled closer to the Garlanian city. The information Galen had received from his spies in the city showed that Larg had placed lookouts on the mountain, just in case we decided to attack from that direction. It did not matter that this wasn't going to be a surprise attack because the Arthenians would be fighting on the sea, not the land, which gave us the advantage. Although Larg would probably think differently, Captain Arton enters the room with several other officers. I look at him saying, "I thought you were going to command one of the other ships." Arton replies, "I decided that Galen could use my expertise here instead." I glanced from Galen and Arton, knowing exactly what they were up to. I say to them both, "I don't need a babysitter." Galen sighs, saying, "I am not having this discussion. I asked Arton to have your back in case I was needed elsewhere." I start to argue, but Galen cuts me off, saying, "You are the Garlanian future leader. How can you ask me not to do all I can to keep you safe?" I glare at him, replying, "You're twisting my words on me." He smiles at me, teasing. It worked. Ignoring him, I fold my arms, studying the map. I ask, "How much longer until we reach inland?" Arton replies, "At this speed, we should reach the city in a few hours. Perhaps you should get something to eat and rest." I start to decline the offer until Galen assured me that he'd let me know when we were nearing the city. Chapter 12. The time seemed to pass so slowly until I was standing out on deck looking out at the Garlanian army. Galen stood by my side ready for battle, the 4 warships and the Arthenians in perfect formation waiting for Galen's orders. The Garlanian had their own ships ready for battle facing us, although they seemed not as advanced as the Arthenian ships. I didn't want to underestimate them. Larg's army were along the base of the cliff. In the skies there were soldiers with weapons in hand, riding the winged arthropods. I tried to locate Larg, but could not find him. I asked, "Do you see Larg?" thinking to myself that the quicker he was taken out, the faster the battle would end. Galen looks down at me, saying, "Larg will wait till he thinks it is safe for him to appear, most likely when he thinks that he is winning and we have lost all hope. Then he will show himself, Dorothy." He continues, "Don't worry. I have my people still inside the city walls, working to end this war sooner." I ask, "But how? The elders?" We free them, then I can tap my ruby slippers and go home." I know the lame joke, right? He smiles at me, shaking his head, sighing, "Smart girl." "Yes, if we can free them from his control, then they can tell the Garlanians to stop, and I'll put an end to Larg." A shiver went down my spine at his final words. I quickly reply, "We can't kill him, Galen. It would just put blood on our hands." Galen moves my hair back from my face, saying, "Your heart is too kind and forgiving, my love. He would never show you the same mercy." I replied, "That is why we can't kill him. We would be no better than him if we did." The Garlanians' trumpets filled the air. Galen smirked, saying, "I knew Larg would grow impatient and attack first if we waited long enough. Now they will learn what it is like to fight us on our terms." Galen spoke into a small device, telling his men to hold their ground. He ordered the Nero jet pilots to get ready to deploy. Captain Arton came to stand at my right side. Galen asked, "Any word yet?" Arton answers, "They are nearing where the elders and their family are being held. They should have them within the hour." Larg was never very smart. I would have never left the city so defenseless within. Galen agreed, smiling. He said, "That would be his undoing." A chill runs down my spine as I watch the Garlanians' fleet quickly approaching us. The roars of the arthropods filled the air. As each ship came face to face with each other, the Garlanian ships started firing their cannons. I had to hold on to the railing as the first hit shook the ship. I look out at sea, watching the Nero pilots attacking the warriors on top of the arthropods. I gasp as one arthropod strikes out at a Nero pilot, who quickly flies out of the way. He fires his force field gun at the Garlanian, causing him to fall into the water below, while another Neuro pilot falls into the water, having been stabbed by a Garlanian missile captain. Approaching on our right, a soldier cries from the far side of the ship. Galen wraps his arms around me, grabbing hold of the railing. He shouts, "Prepare for impact." The blast rocks the ship, followed by an eerie silence. Galen asks, "Are you okay?" I nod, looking up at him. He slowly lets me go, turning around to see to his men. He yells, What are the damages?" Before anyone could answer him, the ship is shook again. A loud roar fills the air as our ship is pulled quickly towards the Garlanian warship. Captain Arton shouts to Galen, "They have harpooned the ship with a cable. I can't cut it." Before Galen can give any orders, our ship is suddenly pulled tightly alongside the Garlanian ship. As the Garlanians board our ship, Galen orders, saying, "Get Dorothy below now. Guard the doors." I was quickly taken down to the second helm room before I could even argue. I could hear the click of the lock as the guards slid the door shut. I leaned against the center table, wishing I had paid more attention to how the computers work. I could turn on a screen if I knew how, but there hadn't been enough time to learn about the ship's computers. The minutes seemed to tick slowly by as I wait. Then the shouts came from outside my door. I turned, listening to the guards fighting. I quickly moved around the table, wanting to put as much distance between me and the door. I kneeled down behind the table, pulling out my gun. I knew the force field gun wouldn't hold anyone for long on land, but I hoped it would slow them down at least enough so I could take them out. I look around the corner of the table as the door slides open. 2 Garlanian warriors walk into the room, while another waits outside. I fire the gun at the closest man. The field envelops him, flickers, and vanishes, releasing him. I mumble under my breath, tossing it at his head. He wobbles on his feet, sliding to the floor. I gasp. Can't believe that worked. I stand up, looking at the other Garlanian. He had a large knife in one hand. He grimaced, saying, "I'm sorry, but I have my orders. I will try to make this as quick and painless as possible, my lady." He moves around the table, reaching for me. I ran to the other side. I start to pull out my dagger, but stop, noticing a cup of hot liquid on the desk behind me. Grabbing it, I toss the contents at the man across the table. He wipes at his face, swearing. I jump on the table, running towards him, kicking the knife from his hand. He turns just as fast and knocks my legs out from under me. I fall hard on the table, but manage to kick him in the face. I quickly roll off the table, moving towards him. I punch him in the stomach, causing him to bend forward. I then grab him by the hair and slam his face into the table, knocking him unconscious. The third guard moves into the room as he crumbles to the floor. Before we could attack each other, an Arthadian voice comes onto the radio. "We've freed the elders. I repeat, the elders are free. Does anyone hear me?" We stand facing each other as the Arthadian frantically repeats his message, then stops. The Garlanian stands with his knife in hand, staring at me. I could see the indecision in his eyes. I say, "I am the rightful ruler of your people, not Larg. You know that. The elders are free now. Who do you think they would wish as the new ruler of the Garlanians, me or Larg?" He slowly lowers his knife. "Forgive me," he says, bowing towards me. I look at him, saying, "There's no need. You're just following orders." He slowly puts away his knife and starts checking on the other men. Looking up at me from where he kneeled, he exclaims, "You're a fine warrior. I am glad I did not have to harm you." I smile back at him, saying, "Same here." I move towards the panel, speaking into the radio. I say, "This is Dorothy, Princess Dorothy. Are the elders in position on the mountain?" I anxiously wait for a response. The man responds, "We will be there in 5. I turn, thinking that now I just had to get everyone's attention. I look at the 3 Garlanians. I ask, "Are you able to walk?" They both nod as I continue. Then it's time for us to put on a little show for everyone. They look at me intently as I explain my plan to them. I stand in the middle of two of the Garlanian warriors while the third one walks in front of us. They each held a weapon in their hands. We come to a stop, standing in the middle of the deck. The Garlanian yells towards Galen, "Tell your men to put down their weapons now, your highness." Galen raised an eyebrow, saying, "Why should I?" The Garlanian moves, revealing me to him. Galen growled, starting towards us. "Galen, don't. Ruby slippers, remember?" I said, hoping he'd read between the lines. He slowly stops, eyeing me, then nods, saying, "Put your weapons down." All the Athenians reluctantly lower their weapons as the Garlanian soldiers push them all in one group. Everything came to a standstill as the Garlanian gave the orders to take Galen and his men onto their ship. He looked at Galen, saying, "Order your fleet to return home." I gave him a little nod. The Garlanian ships returned to the mountainside as the Athenians' fleet left. Larg rode out towards us from the mountain on a huge orthopos. He shouted, "Why is she still alive?" The Garlanian bowed, saying, "I thought you might want to see her die with your own eyes, sire." Larg smiles, nodding his head. Nodding, he says, "Finish her." The Garlanian turns to me. As he approaches with knife in hand, he whispers to me, "Where are they?" I reply, "I don't know." I glance at the cave to the back of the mountain. The elders should have been there by now. The Garlanians push me down on my knees. They argue about what weapon to use, trying to kill time and not me. "You have to move her hair out of the way," one of them says, fussing with my hair. Another replies, "We need a sword, not a knife." Larg suddenly cries, "For all that is holy, just do it already." All three of them answer, "Yes, your highness." I kept my head bowed, biting my lower lip to keep from grinning. One of the warriors yells, "Does anyone have a sword?" Someone approaches us. I could hear something metal being passed around. Another one grumbles, "This won't do. It's not sharp enough." Larg interrupts their argument, saying, "If I have to come down there, more than one head will be rolling today." But the men didn't get a chance to respond to Larg. I look up at what had caused everyone to go silent. At the mouth of the cave stood the Garlanian elders. The oldest of the group moves forward, saying, "Garlanians, stand down. Release Princess Naisha at once, as well as the Athenians." Larg quickly spun around to face the elders, saying, "What is this? You have no right. Or have you forgotten what I promised?" The elders stood her ground, saying, "Your words have no more weight, child. Our new friends, the Athenians, have freed us and our families from your evil rule. Seize him now." Larg's eerie laugh fills the air. He declares, "This is not over." With that, he raced towards the forest. I gasped, realizing that the Athenians' orthopods he rode wasn't as tired as the others, which gave him more speed. I cried, "He's going to get away." Galen wrapped his arms around me, saying, "It's okay. He won't get far." I watched him disappear into the forest, with the Garlanian soldiers following far behind him. Several weeks later, I stood in the study of the Garlanian castle, waiting for Nerissa to arrive. "My study," I thought to myself. I walk over to the window, looking out of it. A gust of wind carried the smell of the honeysuckle-like flowers from the gardens below. I sigh. Everything had turned out better than I had expected. Although many had been badly wounded, no one had died during the battle. I jump at the knock at the door, exclaim, "Come in," turning to face Captain Arton as he enters the room. He bows to me, saying, "Good morning, my lady." I sigh, I wish people would stop doing that. Arton cheerfully replies, "What?" Saying good morning. I glare at him, saying, "You know what I mean. All this bowing. Maybe I should make it a rule or something." Arton smiles. "Well, you could if that is what you wish. I look up at him as I sat down in a chair. I ask, could I? He walks over to the other chair, taking a seat. He says, you are our queen now. You can make or change whatever rules you wish. Well, with the elders' approval, of course. I groan, of course. Captain Arton chuckles. I ask, any word yet about Larg? Arton shakes his head. That worm has still managed to evade capture. But he will be found, with both my men and Galen's men searching for him. Well, it's just a matter of time. I pick at the arm of the chair, nodding. Galen, I thought to myself, in the past 3 weeks, I had not seen or heard from him. Not a single word from him. I ask, how is Galen and his people? Captain Arton smiles, saying, they are well. Galen sends his regards as well. Looking at him, I reply, good. Arton continues, my wife wishes to know if you would dine with us tonight. I nod, saying, of course, I would love to. He stands bowing as he says, then we shall see you tonight. That night, Sarah and Zara helped me prepare for dinner. They seemed to be especially happy tonight. They moved quickly around the room, laughing and joking. I tried to appear happy as well, instead of feeling miserable because of missing Galen. I didn't even put up a fight over what dress they picked out for me to wear for the night. After dressing, I slowly walk out to the dining room, saying goodnight to them. The castle was so quiet, too. Too quiet, I thought. Usually the servants were making some noise or another. I would have been afraid if it wasn't for the 2 guards that followed close behind me. I stop at the door to the dining room, waving my hand over the panel. I hesitate for a moment, seeing the dining room was almost pitch black, except for a few floating globes of light over the table. I step inside the doors, closing behind me. My guards remain outside. All the lights come on as I start towards the table. Galen stands in the center of the room. Behind him were all the people I had grown to know and love since arriving on Azyria. They all happily cheer surprise. Galen smiles at me, pointing up. I look up at a white yard of cloth hanging in between the orbs. Embroidered onto it was the words, will you marry me? I look from it to him in shock. He smiles. I did some more research. I just stare at him, unable to speak. He clears his throat, slowly coming towards me. I ask, You do know what that means, right? He smiles. I wouldn't be asking if I didn't. You still haven't given me an answer. I whisper, looking up at him, yes. He leans closer, asking, what was that? I giggle, saying yes. His hands cups my face as he leans closer to kiss me, saying, one more time. He kisses me as I